Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I've got a full house. Welcome, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, guys?
The Premier League is back after the international break, and we're here to cover match day 5 of the Premier League this weekend. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Jill, we have to go to this game first. Of course, gonna grab the most headlines.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we do, brother. Man U 1-3 Brighton. Of course, we kind of predicted how this game would go, but give us your take on how you saw this game play out.
Look, I think obviously this game could have been very different. I think Man U this season have been quite unfortunate. It's really just a game of very fine margins, inches, by a hair, as some would call it. The goal against Arsenal that was called back. The goal against the goal by Hodgson that was called back because the ball was obviously out of bounds. So very fine margins that could have tipped the scales, very differently. But I would say, yeah, Brighton were the more dominant side. There was a period of time where Brighton was playing very possessive and was really controlling the ball. They could really play both a very possessive style and a very counter-attacking style against Man U, and it worked both ways. That's initially how Danny Welbeck scored on the counter-attack. And then, there was I think it was their second goal where they strung together, I think, like 10 or 15 passes before scoring a goal. So very possession heavy there. And they could just do it both ways. So I think they found the holes they needed in Man U, especially in that midfield, which looked weak from the very start of the game. Eriksen here and there was a bright spot, but again, a player like Casemiro obviously not filling into his role as we expected, especially this season. Not much like last season. So yeah, it was a brutal watch. Only bright spots were really just Eriksen, Rashford when he got the ball at times, and obviously Hannibal getting his first senior goal. But apart from that, it was definitely a very tough performance to watch as a Man U fan.
You pointed out there were some holes that Man U left, definitely in midfield at the very least for Brighton to expose. Mac, I know that you were watching this very intently, and they did, like you predicted, start a sort of different looking midfield with McTominay more so on the right hand side. Walk us through to what you think Man U tried to do, and I guess what eventually played out in that game.
What Man U tried to do is they did look like majority of the game they played as a diamond in midfield. Eriksen ended up dropping quite deep because of how well Brighton were playing, because he was playing on the left-hand side and McTominay was playing on the right-hand side. Because what they were trying to do is deny Brighton cutting through their midfield as much as possible. And for the first, I would say, like 10, 15 minutes, Manchester United looked like the more dominant team because Brighton were trying to invert the fullbacks and ended up with Manchester United also having so many players in the middle of the pitch, where it was very difficult for Brighton to be able to kind of break through and kind of build out from possession. But as a great team does, and De Zerbi's Brighton right now are probably top of the top, prime form right now. What they did, they noticed that and made a change. They brought their wide backs out as far as possible, and then if they were able to make one single pass internally, immediately swung it out to be able to create a 2-on-1 with their wide backs as well as their overlapping wingers at the same time. And with Manchester's midfield, both on the left-hand side, Eriksen, and right-hand side, McTominay, not naturally, I would argue, either of them are really wide players or have the pace to be able to track back as effectively as some other players. They were exposed. It felt like Dalo was on the island. It felt like Regulion was on an island against 2-on-1 situations continuously. It really felt like once Brighton kind of flipped that switch, it was a knife through butter, where as they were able to kind of string passes along, as they would want to be able to pick, it's really kind of picking their poison of, okay, who do we want to be able to get on a break? Do we want Matoma to be able to get on a break? Do we want Danny Welbeck to be able to come collect possession? They really kind of could pick their poison of how they wanted to expose Manchester United. So it started off well, but I would argue, even though they did pack that midfield for Manchester United, it was the midfield's fault a lot of the time. I know a lot of people are putting the blame on Martinez for dropping on the Pascal Gross shot. By the way, Pascal Gross, a quarter of his Premier League goals have come against Manchester United, and there's only 2 players that have scored more goals at Old Trafford as an away player than him. Both of them have played for Liverpool, Steven Gerrard and Mo Salah. So a phenomenal record for him for them. But the midfield themselves, lackadaisical, weak, lethargic. This is completely different from last year's midfield. It really had felt like Casemiro and Eriksen have not just aged 1 year since last year, they've aged 4 or 5 years. They are out of position, they're letting runners get by them. And case in point, that first goal, I think really kind of is very emblematic of how Manchester United midfield played, because Lallana and Danny Welbeck both run past Casemiro. He completely ignores them, doesn't look at them, doesn't recognize them. 2-1, Lallana lets to run through. Danny Welbeck celebrates after scoring a goal against Manchester United. So overall, again, not a great look. This team has a lot of issues. I would argue there's probably only 1 or 2 positive points coming out against this game. But to be fair, it was against Brighton. They're flying high. Brighton seems to have Manchester United's number. Won 4 games against them consecutively. That's over the course of the last 2 years. So seems like it's their favorite opponent. And the fans were chanting, "Can we play you every week?" Yeah, not a great look at Old Trafford. So overall, not a great game. You could see the game plan, but didn't go well.
Also, I know how last pod I said maybe we can isolate James Milner whenever he's on the pitch, but obviously James Milner became one of the few players that have won against Man U on 4 different teams. God damn it. So boy did he prove me wrong. Friggin' James Milner still causing a problem for Man U till this day.
On that point, actually, though, let's just stay on Brighton for a little bit longer. We do have to give them props, Gio. I love how you mentioned that Brighton can hit you with essentially what they try to create is a lot of possession within their own back line, drawing opposition in, and then creating sort of like a breakaway scenario where the wingers oftentimes get that ball front foot and are attacking the opposition's back line. And so they're able to do that, and if that doesn't work, like we saw in their second goal, they're able to slow it down, switch to play, and the midfield, they're doing so well, just passing it in, but they know that as soon as it goes into the midfield, they're going to find another player and out wide, and then just keep it moving. Opposition is essentially chasing shadows at this point because they're so fluid interchangeably. I guess for you, Gio, Brighton seem even more impressive than they did last year. Mac mentioned here. Do you think they have a chance for a top 4 position this year? Do you think that is that too far ahead, thinking too far ahead, or do you think the way they're playing, they have a chance, considering they did have a lot of players coming off the bench? You have your Ansu Fatis, your Joao Pedro who scored, and even Evan Ferguson coming off the bench to that starting lineup. So they do look quite deep, actually. So what are your thoughts on that, Gio?
They absolutely have a chance at it. Look, but based on how they're playing like a top 5 club in the Prem. And mind you, this is with players that we typically wouldn't expect to be put together on a team and be this cohesive. So I don't think they're playing with any pressure. I know they have added games and things of that nature, but the pressure is not there to overperform or to hit certain marks this season. So I think that has a lot to do with their continued success this season. And yeah, they just seem so free out there, and I don't see it stopping unless God forbid a string of injuries that can slow them down. But apart from that, it doesn't seem like they're gonna slow down for anyone, and it seems like they're just playing great football.
And it looked like it's going to be some time before other teams figure them out. But go ahead.
But yeah, to be able to jump in there, I feel like this team, weirdly enough, it's kind of the island of misfit toys in a lot of ways, because we're talking about players like Danny Welbeck, James Milner, or even younger players like a Billy Gilmore, who have been shuffled around between multiple different teams, didn't find the right place. But what De Zerbi has done is being able to amalgamate them together into a cohesive, attacking, beautiful unit where I would argue there are better teams in the Premier League. The Man Cities, the Arsenals have better players, But this team, Brighton right now, comparison to everyone else, feels like they're playing at their potential, playing at kind of their peak proficiency right now. So if they keep it up for the whole season, absolutely, there's no reason why they could be in top four. But of course, the Premier League season is long. There's going to be dips in forms. There are going to be tough matchups. There's going to be bad calls against them. It's just the nature of the business. But this team has the flexibility because going against their win against Newcastle, which they're flying, they come back, make 6 changes, and they're able to do this at Old Trafford. So it seems like they have a depth of option that if you look at the names on the team sheet, you're like, okay, there's some questions here, but the way that De Zerbi is able to fit them together and play an attractive, attacking, full throttle football is absolutely phenomenal, and they're definitely a team to be reckoned with. I know Chelsea had been bitten here before, so maybe other teams are not trying to do this right now. You may not want to go on and pillage some options from Brighton, but I do not know how a bigger club potentially is not already looking at De Zerbi. I know he's been there for a short time period. He's a young manager, but not for too long, if things don't go well on one of these bigger teams, he's the next manager to get pillaged. Will it work out better? Who knows? But right now, what he's doing for Brighton, absolutely spot on.
Come on, he brought back Tariq Lamptey from the shadows. He was the big up and coming thing, then didn't play for like a full year, and now he's back and just getting an assist here and playing like he never missed a step. But just lastly, before we move on to another game, of course, Man U, Julia mentioned, Brighton playing like they are under no pressure. On the opposite end, Man U have a lot of pressure on them, stuff going on off the pitch. And of course, now they have that big game against Bayern Munich this week. I guess on a positive note, Rashford looked quite good. He was beating his man every time. It's just the lack of finishing. And the other thing that stood out to me was when Hudgland was taken off, there were quite audible boos coming from the crowd. So of course the crowd are now behind, I guess, that starting striker for them. But what are your thoughts on their upcoming matchup against Bayern Munich?
I think so. Again, like I said earlier on, Manchester United's season so far has been almost decided by margins, and I think a lot of fans, because of that, shouldn't panic all that much. Yes, there is a lot going on, but again, this is Man United. The media is going to hound you, but going into a game like this, it isn't going to boost anyone's confidence. It's going to be a very humbling experience. I think it's going to be a very humbling experience. I just don't see how they can pick this Bayern team apart. The best case scenario is a draw, in my opinion. I'd be ecstatic from a draw. Just to sit back, really just try and possess the ball as much as you can. Hit them on a counter if possible, but just really hold shape well. Keep that shape and really just if Mason is ready, I think you should take that with a grain of salt. Maybe not get him into the game too early. Just because this might not be a game that you want a more, I'll say, a finesse player to play in. You want more gritty guys to just get in there, get stuck, make, bone crunching tackles and just really put their team on notice. I think best case scenario is a draw here.
Okay, well, Gio doesn't sound too excited about that. What are your thoughts, Mac?
This is, weirdly enough, a free hit for Manchester United. There's not much pressure on here. I think no one is expecting them to come out and get a positive result, let alone any really chance of a win. I think the odds maker have them as less than 10% chance of winning this game, which I think is fair. Bayern Munich have come off a draw against Bayern Leverkusen, so they're not in the tip-top of form right now themselves. They have at least started with a couple wins in the Bundesliga thus far. They're a very deep team. We know what they're going to do. Play that 4-2-3-1. Harry Kane, Thomas Muller will be interesting to see their positioning and how they might want to be able to drop in and collect, and seeing if their chemistry can continue to grow if they both start against Manchester United. So I think this is a low pressure, a free hit potentially for Manchester United, and if they come out with anything, I think that's at least a arguable large step forward. My big concern is that making sure that you don't get absolutely destroyed. At least it's a competitive game, that at least you can look like that you're on level playing field and come back with a more positive result against a team in the Premier League next week. I think that's the bigger step forward for Manchester United. Because again, Bayern, they're definitely a machine, and you playing at away in the Allianz Stadium right now. I don't necessarily think that's a really conducive spot to be able to build positivity for this Manchester United team right now. So tough luck. We'll see how it goes. But I'm not giving them much shot. But hopefully they just don't, like they did in this game, in my opinion, absolutely get dominated.
Yeah, well, we're gonna watch that game and of course talk about it in our next podcast when we review that game. But just to wrap up this part of the podcast, let's touch on, of course, the game that I wanted to watch for this weekend. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch the full game, but of course, a lot of drama happening late in this game. And of course, Mac, I'm talking about Spurs 2, Sheffield United 1. Hey, Mac, walk us through what happened in that game.
It really was a boring nothing burger of a game, in my opinion, for large sections of this. And one of my least favorite players in the world, Richarlison, he came out and to be able to talk about kind of his feelings off the pitch. It was great to be able to hear that from him. Again, not a fan of him on the pitch, but great to hear, be able to talk about him and be opening about his feelings. But he was really the difference maker. There was a pre-Richarlison in this match and a post-Richarlison match. When he came on, he made an impact. Spurs looked good early on, but weren't kind of able to break that line. Sheffield United were able to kind of get their goal from, as probably they'll only be able to score this year, off of Matt scramble, off a set piece. Luckily, we have to get a lead. But Spurs, they seems like, at least this feeling, and I think that this is something that's different for Spurs over the last couple of years. There feels like a semblance of joy, of fun, of positivity that we haven't seen from. It's like the complete opposite of what Chelsea fans are feeling right now. Maybe we'll touch on about that later, where they always feel like, okay, we're able to get that next chance. We'll be able to take that next opportunity. Even though we don't necessarily have that Harry Kane, we have kind of exciting young players that they want to be able to cheer for. They want to be able to see them progress and move forward. So that really kept them in this game. With the added time that was given to kind of the lazy game that Sheffield United were trying to employ. This led to what I noted down was the latest game winner in the 100th minute in Premier League history from Kulusevski from an assist from Richarlison after Richarlison had tied it up, also in added time. So lovely to see kind of that never die attitude. And it feels like a little weird and disgusting, at least for me, that I wanted Spurs to well. They wanted to play well. They seemed like they were, even though they were losing, they were coming out with a great intent and positive attitude. So I know that a lot of the kind of the plaudits have gone to Richarlison for this game, but I just want to talk about Ange Postecoglou because he's done a phenomenal job. The way that he manages his team, some of his comments talking about after the international break, and specifically what Richarlison was talking about, you can't help but be supportive of him, of how he's like, yeah, this is just football, and we want to be able to make sure everyone's happy, having a positive attitude, and you kind of feel that in the team as they're playing, and like I said, the never say die attitude that they seem to have, which is the complete opposite of what Spurs have been for quite a long time. I know Gio generally has enjoyed that for the last couple of years, probably. Gio, but your thoughts? Seems like we got positive Spurs back. Isn't that exciting for you?
Yes and no, but I think actually now in hindsight, looking back at it, the appointing of Postecoglou, in hindsight just makes so much sense and kind of works out for them because Spurs at the end of the day, they have a good young core, but they don't have the bigger names and the bigger pieces to say we are a top dog in Europe. Now with that being said, they're able to sort of drop their expectations a little lower and be able to play more free football under Postecoglou. So I think in hindsight works out great for them because anything, if people are counting them out anyways, anything more is already a plus. So I think in hindsight works very well for them. I actually have nothing really bad to say about them right now. Unfortunately, was hoping, was checking my phone throughout the day and was hoping, oh man, they got one. Okay, 1-0, 90th minute. I thought it was in the bag.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they came back. Crazy. Obviously, Richarlison getting that one. Big for his confidence. I mean, if anything is gonna get you out of a rut, I think a clutch goal like that, even if it were to tie it, would have been equally as exciting for him. But then for Kulusevski to go on 2 minutes later and to score the game winner. I think the team's on cloud nine. They had plenty of chances throughout the game, but I think they were kind of just trying to do too much. Weren't as selfish as they needed to be to put shots on net, put shots on target, to really test the keeper. But yeah, they definitely should have had more than two, and it shouldn't even have led to that, to be honest.
Yeah, Gio, of course, to your point there, 28 shots to compared to Sheffield United's 7, 71% possession for Spurs compared to Sheffield 29%. And like you said, playing more freely, yeah, it is, I would say, no offense to Sheffield United, we expected Spurs to come out and dominate this game, but even when they went 1-0 down, they still continued to fight, like Mac mentioned, and eventually got their goals. And just to quickly wrap up, couple of things came across, of course, after the game. Ange Postecoglou was asked if Tottenham fans should lower their expectations based on how well they started the season, and he said, paraphrasing here, no, let them enjoy it. He doesn't want to be bursting anyone's bubbles. This is an exciting part of being a supporter, and you don't want your fans to just be negative all the time. So let them enjoy it, because we just have to try to live up to that expectation. And it's actually a breath of fresh air hearing a manager saying that, because of course a lot of managers would downplay how well they started and just say we're just keeping our head down, taking game by game. No, he's kind of gone a different way and uplifting and keeping things positive, like Mac mentioned. And of course, just lastly, Heung-min Son came out saying, of course, seeing Richarlison score felt better than him scoring, of course, after all the problems that he had gone through. And so even that just brings that whole team chemistry and positivity in that camp to a new level, I would say. So big up Spurs. We'll definitely keep an eye out on how they're doing, but we'll take a quick break here, guys, and then we'll be back covering some more Premier League action. So stay with us. Welcome back to Hustle for you guys. We are going to continue our podcast now, discussing the Man City and West Ham game. Gio, this game, we predicted Man City to still get the win away at West Ham with the sort of just quality that they have, but it didn't start that well for them. West Ham did go on the front foot, got their goal, of course, James Ward-Prowse. Another goal or assist involvement for this West Ham team, and it's looking like a great signing for them. What were your takes on West Ham getting the lead and Man City having to come back and try to win this game?
To be fair, again, like I said, their chances were going to come few and far in between. It was either going to come from a set piece or a counterattack, and that's exactly how it came. And a great finish at that. The diving header, I thought, was was very, very clinical. To dive at that angle, at that position, to put yourself in a vulnerable position like that, it's tough. But great ball in. Can't say much about that, but they started off quite strong, and they kind of had an idea of how they really wanted to play Man City. Early on, yes, possession may show otherwise, but early on, Man City was making a lot of lateral passes. Nothing too dangerous. Balls over the top were flying out of bounds. They just didn't look like themselves early on, and West Ham were kind of very comfortable playing the way they were playing, and I guess you kind of expect it over time. Once they get one, they start getting a couple more, and Pep was able to go into halftime, really break things down, come up with a game plan, and really just noticed what was working, and that was Jeremy Doku on the wing, cooking whatever was in front of him. So yeah, I mean, like a lot of the offense came from Jeremy Doku. I would give majority of credit of the win to him, because much like Manchester United, banks on that wing and Rashford, this game, Jeremy Doku proved why Pep wanted him and almost has that game breaker mentality.
Yeah, of course, Jeremy Doku getting that start for Man City, Jack Grealish being out. Also, I think it was, of course, Kevin De Bruyne was out as well, amongst others. And I was just looking, when West Ham went up, I'm looking at the bench that Pep had to bring on, and I'm just reading a bunch of midfielders and defenders here. I'm not looking at much in terms of offense, but of course they were able to change it, and of course Mac will walk us through it. But yeah, Jeremy Doku though, getting that goal to sort of start that comeback. What were your takes on how even now we know what Man City possesses, they still have that ability to come back and just impose their game on the opposition. Mac, what were your thoughts?
I think that Man City, it's weird because, again, as I mentioned earlier, with Brighton playing in terms of peak kind of performance right now, Man City are definitely have not kind of shifted into what would be the right gear. I'm not a car guy, I don't know. But the point being is they haven't reached kind of their full potential. They're not playing their best football, kind of what we saw towards the end of last season in the Premier League. They were nowhere near close to that. But the confidence, the poise, the understanding of our methodology is going to work out over a 90-minute football game. The more time you give us, this add-a-time rule again for them, it's kind of it's very similar to me. And I know I always make a basketball comparison, but it seemed that's kind of a 7-second or shot less. You give them more possessions. If they're the better team, they're going to end up winning the game because they have more talent and quality on the court. Similar to football, you're giving more time for this Man City team to be able to dictate play, to create opportunities. They're going to have more opportunities to score. And because they have the better talent and a better manager, they're going to be able to do so. I do want to give credit here to West Ham because they did have good opportunities. Mikel Antonio, poor touch on a breakaway. Ederson had to be able to make a very, very smart stop from a corner. West Ham were in this game. So kind of going into this game, talking about in our preview, I had mentioned that, okay, it's really going to be, I feel like Man City's going to win. They're just going to have just enough, which they did. But are West Ham going to be close enough in level where they seem more of a threat this year? And I felt like in this game, it really showed that they did. They're a much better team than they were last year. It seems like they've put it all together. David Moyes has done a great job after winning European silverware last year. Be interesting to see now that the European cycle has kind of kicked in for them again, going into the Europa League. Can they keep it up? Interesting to see, but thus far they're a much better team and more of a threat. But I do want to quickly just touch on what Gio mentioned in terms of Doku, where after the game, Pep was talking about, I love his ability, his willingness to be able to drive and go at players. It seemed like an underhanded shot to Jack Grealish at the same time, but Doku was the cause of West Ham's goal themselves, and for him to be able to get on 20 seconds, I think it's like 40 seconds into the second half, to be able to get back that response, you can kind of see. Even though he was shy in his first game, I felt like it seemed like, yeah, I'm going to be able to take chances. I'm going to be able to kind of put myself in a position to make a mistake. He did, but is also going to be able to take the opportunities to kind of be a game breaker in that final third. So it's great to see that. So overall, great win for Man City. And lastly, kind of before handing back to you guys, is that a little bit, okay, I'm going to temper this. I'm really going to temper this. I'm worried about Haaland because he's missing bare chances. I'm not going to lie. He missed a tap in. There was a header here in this game as well that he missed quite easily that we would have seen him score last year. He did end up scoring as the game was being wrapped up. So he's still not, again, I'm not saying that I'm worried that he's not going to be a good player. I'm not saying I'm worried that he's not going to score a whole lot of goals. I'm worried once he starts figuring out and actually finishing these chances again, because he seems still like he's on vacation mode a little bit, in my opinion, because a lot of these opportunities, he didn't need 4, 5, 6 to score 3 goals last year. Now he's taking 4, 5, 6 to score maybe 1, right? So he needs to be able to hit those heights again. And I think that it'll be the interesting dynamic between him and Alvarez is very, very different than what he used to last year. De Bruyne just kind of feeding him tap-ins. So we'll see if his evolution of the City team is able to evolve and he's able to continue to improve, because I feel like against these bigger teams, the difference between last year and this year is that he's not taking that next step. There are reasons because the players behind him are different and not as good. But for them to get back to those levels, I feel like that's one thing that they have to fix. Even though he's still he's leading the Premier League in goals, and I'm saying that, so it's the most candid of compliments at the same time.
You definitely don't want to go down the route of I can't remember the name of the guy who was predicting, Haaland might not get 15 goals in the Premier League last season. I'm sure you're not going down that route, but I guess it's a fair shout, Gio. Haaland did eventually get his goal against West Ham, which I think he pretty much always does. But Man City still were able to get the comeback, and of course now going into the Champions League. I'm sorry, I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Zveda. All right. I'm sorry, no disrespect, but we kind of expect a comfortable Man City win here. What are your thoughts, Gio?
No, I think Haaland. like we said many times last season, you don't want an angry Holland. And I know he's gonna be hard on himself. As he stated, in many post-match interviews, especially the CBS ones, where he states that
Mhm.
there are many chances that he could have scored even more, maybe 5, 6 goals, right? Like that one game where we thought he was prematurely subbed out, because Pep wanted to conserve Messi's records. So we know how hungry he is. So do you want to poke a bear? I think the bear's already been poked, and I think he's well aware of what people are saying, and he's gonna use this opportunity to really make a statement. So I mean, it sucks that it has to be a weaker side, but nonetheless, expect Holland to make a statement. Expect him for 2 goals at least.
Oh, so Gio is definitely on board for that. Mac, your thoughts?
Well, Gio, I don't know what you about poking bears. I'm Canadian. I'm Dylan Brooks. I poke bears. Okay, I'm ready for any challenge they think we give me. I'm ready. But this team that they're facing, Cervena Zvezda, it definitely sounds like a fake beer from Europe. It sounds great. I would drink the beer. Seems like it's it'll be a good time. Fun would be had. Fake club. So I'm if you give me the over under of 1.5 goals for Holland, I'm definitely going to take the over. Because, like I said, I poke bears and I let them kill me. It is what it is. So it will definitely be a lot of fun. The question for me really is this is the type of game where if Man City are starting to enter their peak mode, it's not a 2-3-0 win. It's a 6-0 win. And that's what I'm more interested in, is like how high the goalie tally comes. Because Champions League starts, this is a competition that, again, Man City, if they can go back-to-back, I feel like that they've got the first one, they got the monkey off their back. If they're able to go again, they will want to make a statement. And they have the perfect, not real, fake team, AI-generated team to be able to do it against. So again, I expect a complete, utter dominant shellacking.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Valid.
pretty much the same. My thoughts is that even as we know, sometimes Man City, off the back of winning yet another league, tend to start slow, but I think this is a perfect opportunity for them to dive straight into their sort of peak form. If this is the point to start it, this might be it. Mac?
Quick question. How many minutes does Calvin Phillips get in this game? Over under 30 minutes.
Let's say this: over under 4.
What?
He's gonna come in for the garbage. He's gonna get 4 minutes.
That's no. I feel like they're gonna be up 5-0. He's gonna come on. Roger's gonna get a break after like the 50th minute. You know what I mean?
That's under. I'm gonna say 20 minutes. I'm gonna say 20 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 20 minutes. I'm gonna say 20 minutes.
Hey,
that's if he touches the field.
We'll keep an eye out for that. But we're going to continue now talking about some other action in the Premier League. And so, Mac, I'm going to toss it to you first. I guess just pick a game that stood out to you, and let's chat about it.
Oh, so I don't want to do this. No, I do want to do this because I feel like of the other games, there's 4 other games that are very interesting for me, and I would love to spend a couple of minutes talking about all of them, but we may not have enough time. So I just want to enjoy the Chelsea and Bournemouth 0-0 game. It's getting from bad to worse. There's that clip of Nicholas Jackson shooting the ball with his left foot, and it seems like it's going out for a throw-in. After spending $1 billion, that's your striker. The memes are there. The memes are ready. Again, Bournemouth are not a horrible team, but they're not a team where it felt like a lackluster display Chelsea put out on the pitch. Their lineup's not, again, we're going to ask a lot of questions. And my favorite stat of the weekend, and if we don't end up talking about them later, is that Declan Rice has more wins playing for Arsenal than Enzo Fernandez has playing for Chelsea. And Declan Rice got signed just at the beginning of the season. So it's not great days for Chelsea. It's getting worse. I feel like the only positive of Manchester United's season so far is that Chelsea are worse. They're like, again, it's something. There's some. Let's look. We are positive people, all 3 of us, right? Like we like to look on the bright side of things. Like the glass is half full.
Definitely.
And Chelsea, well, let's just say they have no water in their glass. They got nothing. Nothing's great. There's no fun. There is no. It is the complete opposite of Tottenham with Postecoglou in terms of joy. There is no fun. No one wants to be there. I don't feel like anyone wants to be on the pitch at the same time. I feel bad for some of the players because I like some of their players, but it's not going well. A scoreless draw against Bournemouth is not a great look. So again, we'll see if Chelsea can turn it around. I'm skeptical in terms of we'll see their progression is, let's say, if it would be the tortoise or their hare, very much on the tortoise side. They're taking it slow. We'll see if they eventually improve. But while they haven't improved, it's fun to watch them kind of sputter and miss opportunities like this.
Yeah, the only thing I have to say about this game, of course, going into something I came across on X, there was a graphic of the final score: Bournemouth 0, Chelsea 0, and one of the captions was "tough break for Bournemouth, who dropped points against a relegation battling team in Chelsea." So that pretty much sums up sort of their situations. Of course, currently, hopefully they can turn that around. But I guess Gio, do you have a game that you might want to touch on from this weekend?
Yes. And it's the game that I said that would be the one I wanted to watch the most, and it was the Newcastle game. So as I said, what if it doesn't go well and Eddie Howe's on the hot seat? I still think he should be on the hot seat after that performance. It wasn't really convincing. Chances were, again, hard and few in between. It looked like a very possible game that they could use and dominate, but it just didn't work out that way. And again, they got a goal from a very fortunate situation, getting a pen. You can't bank off scoring. You can't bank scoring goals off pens alone. So based on sides on paper, not on paper, depth, the bench, Newcastle is levels above these guys. So the fact that they won off a penalty and won 1-0 and just skated the way was kind of shocking to me, kind of disappointing. So I don't think that necessarily takes Eddie Howe off the hot seat. If anything, people will be questioning it even more. This is your convincing performance. This is far from convincing. There should be still a lot of questions there.
Yeah, I just want to read out the stats here. Even at home, they were outchanced, 11 shots to 9 for Brentford. And so, talking about hot seat, Mac, there's a quick turnaround in their next game. So, what are your thoughts on the current situation at Newcastle?
Newcastle, again, it's going to be interesting because their season actually getting to full action going forward against their matchup against AC Milan in the Champions League starting this week. So it's tough days for them. They're not necessarily, I would argue, the deepest of teams. And in this game, they got up by the skin of the teeth. And it wasn't as if they really created, I would argue, the it's not as if they had a great play of action and created an opportunity and that led to a penalty. It simply was because of Brentford's goalkeeper, Flecken, making a mistake and knocking off,
Right.
I think it was Anthony Gordon. So there's not many positives, I feel like, from an attacking, free-flowing sense you can take out of Newcastle, because it seems like they, in some ways, have been figured out from how they were so successful last year in terms of kind of their time wasting, in terms of how they're going to be able to press. Teams have kind of to figure out, and it'll be interesting to see going into Europe, playing 2 times a week, having the Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday games going back to back like that. If they can evolve their game to the next step where, okay, what are different ways that we can create goals? If teams are playing against low block and trying to doing a Newcastle to us, what can we do? How can we approach them? How can we get at them? And I'll be very interested to see if that evolution does occur. And why, again, Gio had mentioned in terms of Eddie Howe being on the hot seat, because this team, I don't feel like the expectation for them going forward, in my opinion, would be it has to be top 4. And if it's not top 4, they could be in trouble. And Premier League hasn't gone the greatest thus far, and adding more fixtures list to, like I said, a not so deep team may become tough. So, and they're in, arguably, I think we could all agree, the toughest group. And to start off with, in Milan, playing AC is a tough look. They have a dangerous team. Rafael Leao is a game breaker of game breakers, and it's going to be very difficult for them to stop. For a team that hasn't looked as strong defensively so far this season than they did last year. So I think it's going to be a tough matchup, and they're going right back at it again on the weekend. So we're going to learn a lot about, I feel like, this Newcastle team over the next 2 weeks for these first 2 rounds of Champions League fixtures.
Yeah, and I guess just to give a chance to Gio to chime in on this as well, AC Milan, of course, on the wrong side of the result against Inter Milan in the Milan derby this weekend, but they're going to be looking to bounce back, and so what better way to bounce back than getting a Champions League win? What are your predictions for this upcoming match?
Exactly. So yeah, like you said, Milan obviously, well, AC Milan here, got absolutely thrashed by Inter Milan. So yeah, no, I think as competitors, you're gonna want to go out there and prove yourselves again. So if I'm gonna be completely honest, I'm gonna see a 3-1 Milan win here. I don't think I think Newcastle's gonna have a lot of jitters going into the first Champions League game in however many years.
Hmm.
And obviously Milan's been there, done that. Group stage games, it's whatever to them. I think they're going to be, well focused on having a good game after having a not so great game. And again, as a soccer player myself, after bouncing back, after a tough loss, you want to bounce back and prove yourself. Uh, Not even to the fans, but you want to prove to yourself that there's no way another team is gonna manhandle us like that again.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for that matchup, and of course cover that in our next podcast. But just to wrap up the podcast for today, I will quickly mention the game that I didn't really spend too much time watching, but definitely a number of goals late into this game for Aston Villa against Crystal Palace. Of course, there were news coming out that Crystal Palace manager Richarlison had to miss the game as he was feeling unwell, and so of course we wish him the best going forward. But hey, his side did take the lead through Odin Edward in the second half, and then of course Aston Villa won it late with goals from Duran, Luis, and Leon Bailey. So as we kind of predicted, it came late, but Aston Villa did show, I guess, their prowess and firepower going forward. And so just wanted to shout them out. You guys correctly did mention that in our preview. So Aston Villa now overtake Crystal Palace in the standings, and could this be their chance to sort of start that, I guess, quote unquote, dark horse campaign and try to sneak into higher European competitions? I guess time will tell. But for now, this concludes our podcast for today, guys. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at house_of_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be later this week when we review the action from the first round of matches for the Champions League, of course. Mac, thank you.
Chelsea suck.
Gio?
Please, Manu, please.
See you guys soon.